Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the best accessories in the game and stuff that I think might be useful whether you're a beginner transitioning all the way into the end game or you just want to use some other things, and we're going to talk about it from a gear perspective of normal PvE, PvP gear, and also don't forget life skilling and everything else. And before we start, apparently I heard that Velia fishing was bad, so I wanted to test it, and yeah, there's a lot of people here and it's exhausted. Not surprised. But anyway, with that said, let's talk about this. So accessories have been streamlined. Basically, you're at endgame, everyone uses Kharazad, right? And the way you would build stats at the endgame is when you have your Kharazad accessories, and basically the way it works is you get all these crystals down here, and then you would use the crystal based on what you would normally use. For example, instead of an accuracy crystal or like an accuracy accessory, you would just use the accuracy one. So what it would look like is eventually the end game goal is you pick whatever crystal works for you. But for everyone who isn't at that spot yet, I want to talk about some gear pieces you can get. So as we all know, the first thing a beginner would get was probably going to be one of these old moon accessories. You can actually get 2 of them these days. It shows you how many you've gotten. And the reason you would get these now is because you can basically melt them down into Essence of Dawns, and no matter which one you get 100 of them. So I think that's fine, assuming that, you know, the price of Essence of Dawn isn't, you know, like, let's say you're watching this a year from now and Essence of Dawn actually sits on the market. It might be different later, but at least now when it's maxed out, it's, you know, probably worth doing. So what I would get is probably the Crescent Rings, simply because, like, just more AP overall for beginners is the way to go. And so I'm not sure about the other ones, but like, chances are if you're getting these, you're gonna be getting enough gear in like less than a month to be transitioning out of this kind of gear. I would consider this beginner anyway, so I would just get the one that puts you up into a new bracket. Sylvian ones, this one is actually PvE higher damage because it gives like 15 plus 8 to Sylvians. However, that limits your grinding to like a area that, you know, may or may not be useful. But depending on where you grind, this could be more damage than Crescents, but it really just depends if it puts you into a new bracket. And Tungrad earrings are just, you know, not so great these days. And Black Spirit Rage is obtained through the Reform crystals. If you're at Sovereign, you could, you know, just get it from PvP, but it's useful, but it's not useful enough to sacrifice a big chunk of your AP for. So I would just go Crescents. Narc Earring is not a bad option either, but that's limited to where you grind. All right, so with that said, let's talk about other notable accessories. So I made a list of things I would, you know, try to get. As we all know, at endgame nowadays, people have 2 options. One, to buy a Pen Debo or a Tet Debo, exchange it for a Kharazad, or you can make the Kharazad from base and enhance it yourself. Now, one big question that I've gotten quite often was, is it better to buy it at Pen and that like a Debo at Pen or Tet and then enhance it, or should you make it from base Kharazad and then enhance it? Now, assuming we're talking about averages, like average RNG, you're cronning on normal stacks and everything else, it in theory is cheaper to enhance it yourself, assuming you're like literally average, not unlucky, not very lucky, just average. It's cheaper to enhance one yourself to Nav, I believe. And I did a video where I calculated the amount spent and everything. So if you look at it, yeah, basically it's kind of roughly the same or cheaper. So obviously you might have good and bads, but on average it is cheaper to self-enhance Kharazad. But with that said, all of the pieces except for earrings are, you know, basically up to you. Do you like enhancing? If so, you might want to do it yourself. If you really don't like enhancing, buy a pen Debo and then exchange it, and then that skips a lot of the problems. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. There is, you know, a lot of RNG to it. So the next thing I want to talk about is going into the belts. So it's kind of streamlined, the same as what I talked about. However, there are a few belts like this as a doll one, which is not great, but there is a Taebaek one. Now this one is very limited uses, and I would consider the usage of this one to be for large scale PvP. So the way it works is, you see how if you look at the bottom tooltip, it says the Blessing of Taebaek, right? And each enhance basically gives you a buff. So, you know, in most classes you have a Z buff, a E buff, whatever, like something that gives you like a burst window. And this essentially does the same thing. The downside of it is when this is on cooldown, you cannot swap your belt out. I think that's, you know, it makes sense, but it's not something that everyone should have. So basically the only time you'd use it is like at pen and for large scale PvP, where you're in a full platoon and literally everyone else around you can get the buff as well. So anyway, with that said, I don't think this is a bad one. I think there should be a lot of changes to it, and if you don't have a pen one, it's probably just not worth using. So this is what it does. Basically, you're trading about 3 or 4 AP off your sheet for a 1-minute burst window, which I've seen it. People use it in those calamity bosses, like the Land in the Morning Light ones, and also large scale PvP. That's really it. However, with that said, it is kind of good if you effectively use it or someone else uses it on you. And the downside is it has a 10-minute cooldown. What I would do if I was Pearl Abyss and I wanted to make these actually usable instead of just all streamlined everything else, is I would reduce the cooldown from 10 minutes to like 3 minutes. That way, you know, everyone in your party can get the buff, and also you're not hard stuck with this on for 10 minutes. Or at least make the AP or some other main sheet stat a little bit higher to make it worth using. So with that said, I don't think this is bad. It's just very situational. And then we have the Debo belts and everything. So next we want to talk about the earrings, because earrings are actually the most flexible spots for a gear progression. You still do go Kharazad at the end, but if you look at this one, pen Debos are 19 AP. With that said, Distos are 21 AP. They come with a downside of -5 DP per earring slot, so you're -10 if you have 2 of them. That's not really so great. However, if people just want to push themselves into the highest bracket, like AP bracket, I see a lot of people at endgame using double Distos with a cost of negative DP. However, what I use is I actually just use Kharazad, because eventually the goal is to get them all to deck. So if we look at it in terms of a number perspective, when you exchange your Debo for a Kharazad, if you're looking at this one, it's like, what, 19 AP, right? But it does give you the opportunity to use a crystal over here, and it gives you the Jin when you exchange, so it's not like you have to buy an extra one. And so this would give you a +4, making your total stat AP in theory higher than a Disto. However, if you are using a Disto, it'll put your sheet bracket AP higher, and like the number over here in the bracket, that one will be higher. So like, it really depends. Does it push you up into a new thing? If not, then use Kharazad, and Kharazad will be the future goal anyway. So I don't think it's a bad choice to still be in Distos now, but just know that eventually you're going to be converting up into Kharazad. Okay, so with that said, we talked about most of the main gear, and we talked about should you go the Deboreka route or just Kharazad directly. And it really comes down to, do you like enhancing? If not, then just buy the thing at Pen, convert it to a Nov, and you have minimal enhancing to do. So, with that said, life skillers, I did not forget about you. Preonne accessories across the board are, you know, the end game for you guys. And, like, honestly, if you're a beginner, it's not really a big deal. More mastery is better, but at the same time, it's not like you're going from like 100 mil to 10 billion every hour, even if you have maximums. And I think most people sit at around between like 2,000 to 2,500 mastery. The high end people, like the 1%, are, you know, the people pushing 3,000. So either way, I don't think it's a big deal. So what should you guys do? Is it better to go Manos or Preonne? So Preonne is the new one they came out with a couple months ago. It is considered the end game, like the accessories, they'll give you the most stats in the end. I do believe that after a certain point, like the amount you spend enhancing it versus the minimal amount of mastery you get, it kind of does fall off. And to pay itself back, like let's say you spent, I don't know, I can assure you that a Nov Preonne is worth more than 200. I would consider that, like, multiply that by like 4, and that's how much like all these endgame ones are worth. So anyway, if you have a Tri Manos, it gives you a exchange for a base Preonne, and a Tet Manos gives you a Tri Preonne, and a Pen one. Pen, I believe, is Oct. So, like, if you can somehow slam a Pen Manos, then it's probably a good idea. But is it worth just buying them all and just hoping for the best? Probably not, I'm going to be honest. Anyway, so, Preonne, still good. I think most people are still at, like, the Tri all the way to Pen. At least for most people, like 95% of us are Tri to Pen, and then everyone else is up there. And one other notable thing I wanted to talk about is for all of you who do AFK processing and or just need extra weight for whatever you're doing. It's like, I guess processing is primarily the big one, but like if you do anything that requires you to have a full inventory all the time, one thing that I think is notable is the Manos Golden Coral Belt. So this one gives 600 weight at Pen. So each tier gives 100, 200, all the way to 600 at Pen. 600 weight is actually a lot. And if you do AFK processing, that's probably an extra 5 minutes or so that you can, well, it doesn't sound like a lot, but more weight actually good. And so I think that's something to look into eventually. Chances are you're going to have to self-enhance this one because it's just, you know, everyone that has one is not going to sell it for this price. And I've seen Tets just sit on the market, you know, regularly. So you could, like, 500 is still good, 600 is better, but I think this one is a good trade-off. 600 weight for a little bit of mastery is a good trade-off if you're doing that. And realistically, if you are doing any sort of processing, like, yeah, the mastery is better, but at the same time, like, at a certain point, if you're past Guru, it's just like crafting more. So you're basically processing a little bit slightly less with mastery, but you can carry more. So like the trade-off, I think, is very worth it. But for other life skills, maybe a little bit different, but for processing, it's fine. I've also seen people who enhance a lot, like, you know, your main goal is just enhancing for profit, which is harder these days. You know how your inventory is literally full of black stones and all that stuff, enhancing whatever you're doing? That also helps. So yeah, this is one thing that I would recommend talking about. And I think that's, for the most part, it in terms of accessories. Like, if you were to ask me this a few years ago, it would have been a lot different since it wasn't as mainstream with Kharazad these days. But I think some just like notable things and common questions I get often. Deboreka, Kharazad. Once again, it comes down to, do you like enhancing? Do you know how to build fail stacks normally? Or if not, even then, they made it easier with the, what is it, these things? These give a lot now, so it's about 22 billion to get from 100 to 300 stack if you use this with no RNG. Is that a good thing? I think that's actually pretty cheap, to be honest. I think they give a lot of event fail stacks these days to the point where you won't even be using like 22 of them, because they give out like 150 stacks, sometimes close to 200s. So realistically, from 200 to 300, like it's probably less than 10 billion to get from a 300. So for all the people who don't like the RNG aspect in this game, this might not be the right game for you, I'm gonna be honest, but the ways to mitigate that would be this as well. So yeah, aside from that, we talked about some other notable items. Is it worth going for these days? Someone has to do it to get Preonne, but you, like, if you don't like the whole RNG process, just buy one at try and then start slamming it from there. It's probably the easiest way to do it. If you can somehow get a pen, it's 100% worth. However, most people who know the market will not sell a pen. But yeah, with that said, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. If you have any questions, be sure to drop in the comments, or you could join the Discord. We have a lot of channels for guides that I keep updated, gear help, and, you know, just general questions. And hopefully my videos help point you guys in the right direction, whether you're a beginner, returning player, or someone who's just looking to get better. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.